Ukraine, of course, a country in special conditions, because Ukraine is about to acquire the European environmental and other standards, sustainability standards, and the Ukrainian wind sector is facing some challenges in this regard. Galina, it's my great pleasure to have you here with us. You've been working with the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association now for many years, and it's my pleasure to welcome you. Hand over to you.
Thank you, Stefan. Let me share my screen. Yeah, okay. Dear colleagues, I'm very pleased to be here, and I would like to thank the organizers of this webinar with a very important topic related to permitting process, and giving me the opportunity to talk about the challenges in adopting European Union environmental standards in Ukraine. Before I start my presentation, just a few words about Ukrainian wind market. As of May 2021, total installed capacity reached 1,452 megawatt. So far, 646 wind turbines have been installed and operating in the country, with average nameplate capacity of 3.5 megawatt. The following wind turbine manufacturers are presented in the market: Vestas, General Electric, WTU, Nordex, and only just 2% others. The map that you can see on this slide operating wind farm. As you see, the majority of wind turbines so far have been installed in the coastal areas of the country with rich wind resources, and at the same time of high sensitivity for biodiversity. Therefore, obtaining a positive conclusion on an environmental impact assessment is a key prerequisite for building permit. Moreover, the European Union, environmental impact assessment should be conducted in line with the European standards for addressing the international banks for projects financing. Before signing the association agreement between Ukraine and the European Union, there was quite a large gap between the Ukrainian and European standards for conducting environmental impact assessment. The signing of the association agreement had two stages. The political part was signed in March and later in June, the economical part of the association agreement was signed, and later on September the same year, Parliament of Ukraine and the European Parliament ratified the association agreement simultaneously. The signing, according to Article 363 of the association agreement, gradual approximation of Ukrainian legislations to EU law and policy on environment shall proceed in accordance with the Annex 30 to this agreement. And the Annex 30 itself includes approximation timeframes and list of European legal acts, in total 26 directives and 3 regulations. There have been several challenges in implementing European environmental and climate change law, arising from the fact that Ukraine is not a member state of the EU and from the legal nature of the EU law itself. This slide summarizes the main challenges in implementing European regulations, but I would just mention only a few of them. The association agreement does not foresee a mechanism for implementation of the most recent versions of the legal acts or involvement of Ukraine to the discussion over issues appearing on the European Union agenda. In such situation, Ukraine is doomed to catch up with the European Union legislation. Some directives provide for establishment of special bodies to assist and support implementations by the European Union member states. Being a non-member of the European Union, Ukraine cannot benefit from the work of such bodies or cannot be involved in them. Implementation of some European Union legal acts required significant financing, and in particular, it's true for Birds Directive and Habitats Directive. For example, Habitats Directive has a direct provision for co-financing by the European Union of the measures to designate Natura 2000 sites. Currently, Ukraine has no access to this financing and couldn't benefit directly from them. Now I would like to draw your attention to the environmental impact assessment procedure in Ukraine, which is regulated by three main laws: on regulation of urban planning activity from 2011, on environmental impact assessment from 2017, and on strategic ecological assessment from 2018. Sorry, some technical problems. It does not work.
I think, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, more information about the law of Ukraine on environmental impact assessment. It was adopted on 23rd of May by the Parliament of Ukraine in 2017 and became effective the same year later in December. This law implements a directive of European Union on assessment of the effects of certain public and private projects on the environment from 2011. This law replaced the law of Ukraine on ecological expertise that was adopted in 1995. And after the approval of this law, the Energy Community Secretariat dismissed the case against Ukraine for improper implementation of the said directive with regard to Ukrainian commitments as a member of the energy community. The law provides for a mandatory procedure for a wide range of business and facility, including construction of 15 kilometers or longer overhead transmission lines of 220 kilowatts or high voltage, and for wind farms comprising 2 or more wind turbines. Sorry. I don't know why I could not. Could you please help me and show the next slide? Yeah.
Yeah, Galina, if you see in the lower part on the left, there is an arrow. You can click on the arrows and move. Yes.
I see. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. This slide illustrates a sequence of the environmental impact assessment procedure in Ukraine. The competent building authorities will consider environmental impact assessment conclusions prior to issuing any building permits for the respective activities. As I have already mentioned, majority of the current operating wind farms in Ukraine are located in the areas of high sensitivity for biodiversity. Therefore, before start environmental impact assessment, The wind developer should conduct at least 1 year scientific researches on flora and fauna, which includes birds, bats, and other mammals, insects, reptiles, and amphibians, vegetations, and also habitats. These researches continue during the construction period as well, and at least 2 years after the wind farm has been put into operation. As my topic is devoted to the implementation of European standards in Ukraine, and in line with Ukrainian task to do it, at the end of 2020, the draft law on the territories of the Emerald Network has been developed and registered with our parliament. And in April, it was recommended by the Committee on Environmental Policy and Nature Management of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine for adopting as a basis in the first region. Emerald Network zones in Ukraine is analog for Natura 2000 territories in European Union. For sure, this is a very necessary law, and it has, as usually, its own pros and cons. So as for the positive, the draft law aims at implementing European Community directives and establishing the legal and organization basis for defining the territories of the Emerald Network. Including creation of national register of Emerald Network areas with geographical boundaries. It's very important because so far it was not clear if this territory belonged to Emerald Network or not. Especially such issues arise during the public hearings or during the negotiations. As for the negative side of this proposal, of this draft law, it introduces another impact assessment procedure on the territory of the Emerald Network, similar to the existing requirement for the environmental impact assessment. In other words, it means that the company will have to obtain an additional permit for economic activity, and they have to conduct twice environmental impact assessment. But the first one will be just environmental impact assessment, and another one will be environmental impact assessment on Emerald territories. It means that it will take more money, it will take more time. And also one of the problem of this, at least we consider as Ukrainian Wind Energy Association, problem of this draft law, it does not clearly stipulate whether it's necessary to pass this environmental impact assessment on Emerald zones to companies that have already received all permits and pass the environmental impact assessment procedure. So, in other words, is it only related to the planned wind farms or to already existing? Why I mention it? Because in April, another draft law has been prepared and registered with the Parliament. This draft law has a title on amendments to certain laws of Ukraine on the prevention of cruelty to animals and the implementation of international commitments on the wildlife protection, and envisages mandatory restrictive provision which prohibits the operation of wind power turbines in case they are not equipped with bird and or bat deterrent devices, if they are located closer than 500 meters to planted forest and residential buildings, as well as on the migration routes of birds. As association, we prepared a letter where we strictly criticize this law. I will explain you now why. Because according to the text of this draft law, each wind turbine should be equipped with such devices. As far as I know, it's not in line with the practice in EU or let's say in other countries. And we agree to have such devices, let's say, depending upon the case, depending upon each wind turbines or wind farms, either on several wind turbines, but not on each wind turbines. And what is also very important that according to this draft law, it related to operating and planning wind turbines. It means that if already operating wind farms has no such devices on which wind turbine, so this wind farm will be stopped without any clear explanations what will be later after such decisions. Yeah. And today we spoke a lot about involvement of local communities. And this slide presents two latest publications of the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association. Each year we issue annual market overview, but I would like to draw your attention to another picture devoted to children books. So this is, I'm proud to say that this is the first Ukrainian books written specially for children aged from 6 to 12. And the title of this book is Secrets of Wind. So it's not a textbook, it's a story, it's adventure of a young boy and girl and professor. And they learn the secrets of wind. They learn how wind power means and what wind power energy and wind farms and etc. So why I show you this book as a sample of involving local communities? I mean that if our children know about the wind energy, its prospects, its advantages, so for sure when they are grown up, they will easier accept development of wind turbine, and they will be environmentally oriented and environmentally minded people. So that was my last slide, and I would be pleased to answer questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Galina. That was a very good presentation of your situation, which is somehow a little bit special because you're kind of moving from one legal system and then acquiring the European legislation. Now, we heard some of the challenges that you're facing, and that sounds actually quite challenging indeed, that you do not even know whether the existing wind farms will have to apply those who are already there will have to apply those European standards. But what is the general impression now? Can you say, do you expect that there will be, that all will lead to a, let's call it again, a lockdown like what we see in Italy? Or would you expect a more pragmatic approach in Ukraine, if we just, as long as it comes to the technical standards? Or you say you can just
Stefan,
not?
I hope for better results. I mean, you know, today my presentation was devoted mainly to environmental issues. Mm-hmm. And you know, we also have some financial problems in the market. And unfortunately, so far, it was the main barrier for further development. And comparing to record 2019, the 2020 could be called the year of stagnation for our market. But as association, we are in close cooperation with different environmental organizations, with our environmental committee at the Verkhovna Rada, and I hope for better solutions. Yeah, and
But
you
this,
know, we also have our, let's say, plans, our goals. For example, to have 25% of renewables till 2035. And we also developed the CO2 neutral strategy for Ukraine. And Ukraine is also, let's say, interested and developing, let's call it Ukrainian Green Deal. So we will, I hope we will reach our goals, but just today I openly describe the problems that we are facing currently.
yes, yeah, thank you for that. But I'd expect that also here from the European Union, you have those two directions. One is to kind of become stricter on environmental and nature conservation standards, but on the other side, also become climate neutral will be part of your obligations to become one day a member of the European Union.
Yeah.
So that needs to somehow be rebalanced. That seems obviously the case. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. But we
How
have
about
very, let's say, at least I'm pretty sure that wind development in Ukraine will have less impact on environmental because we have very strict and very strong environmental organizations. So they keep watching what is going on.
they should all be very happy when you have more wind energy and less nuclear
Sure.
and coal power, no?
Sure, sure.
Yes. Do you you have also international investors who come to Ukraine with
Yes.
the experience, like Falk Renewables? We know Falk Renewables is not active in Ukraine, what we heard. But how do they deal with the situation? Can they give advice on how these things can be kind of transposition in Ukrainian law?
With regards to environmental issues, so again, I would repeat that me personally, I consider that we should improve our environmental standards. Not for sure to have each wind turbine equipped with devices. As for the financial problems, it's another story.
Yeah, we are aware of that, and obviously we need to discuss this also separately. That there's problems with the payments, no, for the wind farms, and then unless this is solved, I think nobody will worry about.
Last year it was the mediation process at the Energy Community Center for negotiation and dispute initiated by two associations, including our association. And in June we signed a memorandum of understanding between the government of Ukraine and the investors in renewables. So unfortunately, this memorandum sometimes, let's say, sometimes government does not fully implement their obligations according to the memorandum, but we are working on it.
Well, good luck with that anyway. Well, thank you very much, Galina.